Okay, we know superhero movies aren't always 100% realistic, but there are still some things that make us struggle to suspend our disbelief. And no, we're not talking about Black Widow's hair always staying so perfect despite her constantly bleaching it. Today we're talking about Captain America's shield and how it performs feats no mere object should be capable of in the real world or in the MCU. Inconsistent. While we know a lot of things in the MCU don't happen in the real world, we accept that this fictional universe functions through its own set of rules. That's why the very first problem with Captain America's shield is consistency. Not the consistency of the Vibranium, that looks pretty solid. In fact, it looks so solid that it's confusing just what it can and can't stand up against. We've been super busy celebrating the fact that Captain America finally got to wield Mjolnir in Avengers Endgame that we almost forgot about a time when he fought against it. In the first Avengers movie, Thor and Cap got into it over who got to take custody of Loki. Poor Loki, his own father doesn't want him. But everyone in the MCU wants him arrested or at least banished. Thor brings down Mjolnir on Cap's shield, using not only the strength of this mighty Uru weapon, but his own godlike powers, and amazingly, the shield's totally fine. Then in Endgame, the same shield is absolutely chopped to bits by Thanos' fancy new giant sword. Seriously, we can't decide which was sadder, this moment or when Hela crushed Mjolnir in Thor Ragnarok. It just seems so crazy that this shield, which has withstood so much, including a direct strike from the hammer of Thor, could be cut apart so easily a few movies later. Damage. Captain America's shield may be inconsistent when it comes to taking damage, but it's also inconsistent when it comes to dealing damage. We've seen this shield withstand some crazy things over the years, so it's safe to say that it's pretty darn solid. In Captain America the Winter Soldier, we saw Steve Rogers chuck his shield at the aircraft carrying his pal Bucky Barnes. The shield is able to make its way into the heavy-duty propeller blades and damage them significantly. Now, even if you're not familiar with the mechanics of aircrafts, you probably know that that's no easy task. It's clear this thing does a ton of damage when it's thrown, or does it? Let's talk about all the people Steve Rogers has hit with this thing. The Avengers really aren't much for directly killing people. Heck, Pepper Potts has more blood on her hands than most of them. But we've seen Steve Rogers bash tons of people with this shield either directly or by throwing it at them. And they all just seem to fall unconscious. The death toll from this thing should be absolutely staggering, and yet it just puts everyone gently to sleep, despite also being capable of stopping propeller blades. Bullets. We all know Steve Rogers is the pinnacle of human fitness, or at least he was prior to the ending of Avengers Endgame, but we're talking about his glory days here, not his retirement. He may be a gorgeous, strong human specimen with a perfect posterior, but he's still a soft, squishy human at the end of the day. That means he's decidedly not bulletproof. And just like a regular human, could be seriously wounded or killed by being shot. Just take our word for it. Don't try it. Don't try it at home, please. Thankfully, he has his super special shield to protect him from all the bullets which actually seem to be getting fired at him. But it seems his shield can't make up its mind regarding what to do with the bullets once they connect. Way back in Captain America the First Avenger, when he was first gifted the shield by Howard Stark, he was shown to stop bullets directly on impact. But later on, in the Winter Soldier, the shield doesn't stop bullets in their tracks, but deflects them instead. Steve was even able to aim the ricocheting bullets toward his enemies, so which is it? Does his shield stop bullets, or do they bounce off of it? Webbing. Right from the get-go, it was pretty obvious that Captain America's shield would never work that way in the real world. But we love that Marvel admitted that even by MCU standards, it proves to be capable of the impossible on a regular basis. In Captain America Civil War, our heroes faced off against one another, and we got to be introduced to Tom Holland's Spider-Man for the very first time. Ah, memories. We sure hope nothing terrible ever happens to this adorable fresh-faced Captain America fan. Peter likes to brag about how he pulled Cap's shield right out of his hands, but that's not all that happened during the fight. At one point, we see Captain America throw his shield and it cuts right through Spider-Man's webbing. Spider-Man responds in shock, declaring the shield doesn't obey the laws of physics. Seriously, how does the shield fly right through the webbing? That stuff is super strong enough to allow Peter to swing from great heights without breaking. It's also ridiculously sticky, as Aaron Davis learns the hard way in Spider-Man Homecoming. So how is Captain America's shield able to just slice through it no problem? Bouncing. Captain America's shield has been shown to be nearly indestructible, being ruined only when the plot calls for it. Apparently, one of the few materials in the MCU stronger than Vibranium is plot armor. Hey, it's not the only franchise that uses that to keep its heroes safe. This shield is seriously strong, and yet it's always bouncing off of things like a kickball. If this object was strong enough and thrown with enough force to stop a moving propeller, then how could it possibly ricochet like that? In real life, there are a few scenarios of what would happen, and none of them involve the purposeful bouncing we've seen the shield do. It could have just ripped right through whatever it's thrown at, especially if it was thrown at a person. Yikes, that one might get a little bit messy. Don't forget, Disney is making these movies now, or it could get embedded in what it's thrown into. Even if it did bounce off a little bit, there's no way it should be able to ricochet around while maintaining such momentum. Summoning. Of course, Captain America needs to have a way to return his shield to his hands. If he couldn't recall his shield in battle, it wouldn't be very useful. He would only really get one shot once he let it fly, and would spend a lot of his battle running towards the shield, which wouldn't be very entertaining. Marvel does at least make an attempt to explain this fantastical aspect of the shield by claiming it uses electromagnetic summoning in order to return it to the thrower. In Avengers Age of Ultron, Cap got a suit with this technology, but in the real world, it just wouldn't work like that. Electromagnets would never be able to recall an object from such a distance, and that's even ignoring the effects of having such a hyper-strong magnet attached to your arm. Even if you're a powerful guy like Steve Rogers, it's just a recipe for disaster. Magnets could help the shield be caught in midair and control it somewhat, but they wouldn't be able to summon the shield from across the battlefield. It's okay, Cap. ICP doesn't know how magnets work either. They're pretty confusing sometimes. Altitude. We all know Steve Rogers can throw that shield over absolutely incredible distances. After all, he's an incredibly strong person, and even if the shield flies further than it would in real life, it's not too far outside the realm of disbelief. But the over-the-top aspect of this move is that the shield never seems to lose even the slightest bit of altitude. If you've thrown a frisbee, or anything else for that matter, you know it doesn't always fly as high as it did the moment it left your hand. Otherwise, it would never hit the ground, and that presents an all-new set of impossible problems. Sure, Captain America's shield is shaped like a disc, which gives it an advantage over more traditional-looking shields. But that still doesn't change the frisbee scenario. To make things even crazier, don't forget about the fact that it's always bouncing off of stuff. If throwing doesn't cause it to get closer to the ground, smashing into various objects and people should at least cause it to lose a little bit of altitude. Seems like there are no limits to how high this shield can fly, or how long before it reaches the ground. Invincible. We're used to seeing our favorite superheroes perform superhuman feats on the regular. It just kinda comes with the territory. It's why Peter Parker is still in one piece after nearly being ripped apart by a fairy in Spider-Man Homecoming. But we know it's possible to injure even superhuman characters. And Steve Rogers is still mortal at the end of the day, so something like falling from a great distance should theoretically cause him to be smashed to bits. It's a real shame, but it's also completely realistic. Well, unless he's carrying his shield, that is. Somehow, when Steve Rogers plummets to the earth, he ends up being totally fine as long as he lands on his shield. How? How would landing on a super hard solid object prevent him from being smashed to bits by the ground? In The Winter Soldier, we got to see the epic elevator fight followed by Steve Rogers smashing through the glass and falling a great distance where he lands atop his shield. Although it clearly didn't feel good, he didn't sustain any significant injuries. It seems like nothing cushions a landing like a piece of vibranium. Vibranium. Now let's talk about Vibranium for a moment. It's hailed to be pretty much the strongest substance in the MCU. We've already talked about how it managed to stand up to blows delivered by Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, which is made of special Uru metal. Stormbreaker is also made of Uru, and we know that's powerful enough to take out the Mad Titan. Vibranium has been hailed as being massively powerful. We've seen people fight over it, make incredible weapons out of it, and we know it's dangerous when it falls into the wrong hands. But according to the Russo brothers, Vibranium may not actually be all that in a bag of chips. When asked about how Thanos was able to destroy Cap's shield so easily in Avengers Endgame, Joe Russo claimed that as the mightiest warrior in the galaxy, Thanos would of course have access to the strongest weapons. So apparently there is a substance out there that's stronger than Vibranium. T'Challa and the people of Wakanda may consider it the mightiest substance in the MCU, but apparently that's not the case. We're still not really buying it though, because this seems pretty inconsistent with what we've seen in the MCU so far, especially where Captain America's shield is concerned. Strength. How strong did the super soldier serum really make Steve Rogers? Supposedly, it didn't really give him any superpowers, but it maxed out all of his standard human stats. So although his actions may seem inhumanly powerful, he's still limited by his morality and the preset his human body came with. Yet we've seen him over and over again perform feats which should be downright impossible. Other times, his strength seems on par with a really strong dude, but not necessarily a superpowered one. He's certainly nowhere near as strong as characters like the Incredible Hulk or Thor, so how is he able to whip that shield around like it's nothing at all the time? Not to mention the fact that he clearly throws it with a ton of force. He may be a perfect human specimen, but he's still a human. He throws that shield around like it's a frisbee. Well, a magical frisbee, when it must be incredibly heavy. Sometimes it seems like the physical strength of Steve Rogers is as inconsistent as his shield. What do you think is the most unbelievable part of the MCU? Tell us about how far you can suspend your disbelief in the comments section below. And don't forget to click on that subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.